My name is Clara Evans, and I'm 35 years old. For most of my life, I've tried to be the calm center of my family's quiet storms, the steady hand, the one who smooths over the cracks. I built a life for myself and my daughter, Lily, here in Portland, Oregon, a city of soft rain and evergreen-scented air that seemed to mirror the peaceful existence I craved. I never imagined I would be the one to unleash the hurricane. It all began on a Tuesday, one of those quintessentially Portland afternoons where the sky is a wash of pearl gray and the steady drizzle makes the world feel hushed and introspective. A client meeting had wrapped up early, and a rare pocket of time opened up in my schedule. I decided to pick Lily up from my parents' house ahead of schedule, a small, happy surprise. The drive to their home in the gently rolling hills of the suburbs was familiar, a route etched into my memory. Their house, a sprawling craftsman bungalow with a deep front porch and climbing roses that bloomed furiously in the summer, had always been a symbol of something I was supposed to belong to but never quite felt a part of. As I pulled my car into the driveway, its tires crunching softly on the wet gravel, a knot of unease tightened in my stomach. I saw my sister Stella's sleek silver SUV parked near the garage, a sign that she had dropped by unexpectedly. I took a deep, calming breath, the air cool and damp, and told myself not to borrow trouble. My parents, Arthur and Eleanor, had been watching Lily twice a week since my divorce 3 years ago. It was a practical arrangement. As a financial advisor at Riverbend Financial Partners, my hours could be long, and the stability they offered was something I was grateful for, a gratitude I had expressed in more ways than one. The front door, as usual, was unlocked. I stepped inside, the familiar scent of lemon polish and old books filling the air. I was about to call out a cheerful hello when I heard voices from the kitchen, one, my father's, a low rumble of thunder that I knew all too well, and another, Lily's, a sound so small and fragile it was nearly lost. My feet stopped moving. I stood frozen in the cool, dim entryway, listening. "No, that's not right. You're smearing it," my father's voice boomed, each word a heavy stone. "Do it properly, you silly child. Can't you manage one simple task?" A chill, colder than the rainy afternoon, crept over my skin. I moved silently down the hallway, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. I peered around the doorframe into the warm, yellow-lit kitchen. The scene that unfolded before me cracked something deep inside my soul. There was my 6-year-old daughter, Lily, standing on a rickety wooden stool pulled up to the deep farmhouse sink. Her small body was tense, her shoulders hunched as she struggled to scrub a heavy, cast-iron skillet, a pan almost as big as her torso. Her brown curls were escaping her ponytail, and her favorite unicorn t-shirt was soaked with soapy water. Her tiny hands, red and chapped, trembled with the effort. My father stood over her, a towering figure of disapproval, his face set in a familiar mask of impatience. My mother was leaning against the counter, her arms crossed, her expression one of mild annoyance, not at her husband, but at the inconvenience of it all. And at the kitchen table, my sister Stella was scrolling through her phone, a picture of detached boredom, while her 2 daughters, Chloe and Maya, snickered over a brightly colored tablet. "She's so slow," Chloe, the older of the 2, whispered just loudly enough for everyone to hear. "She can't do anything." Maya giggled. "Mom says it's because her dad didn't want to be her dad anymore. That's why he left." The air left my lungs. The casual cruelty of the words, the fact that my sister, my mother, my father, all heard it and did nothing, turned my blood to ice. I watched as Lily's lower lip began to tremble. A single tear escaped and traced a path down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away with the back of her wet, soapy hand. "Grandpa," she whispered, her voice a tiny thread of sound. "It's too heavy for me." "Life is heavy," my father retorted, his voice sharp with derision. "Your cousins were helping in the kitchen when they were your age. But you take after your mother. Always finding an excuse." My mother sighed, a long-suffering sound I had heard my entire life. "Oh, Arthur, just let me finish it. She's making a bigger mess." "No," he insisted, his voice unwavering. She needs to understand what real work is. Not everything is handed to you on a silver platter, the way her mother seems to think. Elaine believes she can solve any problem by just writing a check. The bitter irony of his words was a physical blow. The man whose home I was single-handedly keeping from foreclosure, the man for whom I had set up an automatic bank transfer of $3,100 every single month for the past 3 years, was lecturing my 6-year-old daughter on the value of hard work and the corrupting influence of money. Just then, a ceramic bowl slipped from Lily's grasp, clattering loudly in the sink but thankfully not breaking. My father slammed his open palm on the countertop. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the quiet room. Lily flinched violently, cowering away from him, a small, wounded animal. "For heaven's sake," he roared. "This is precisely why your cousins are so much more capable. You are useless at this." In that terrible, clarifying moment, the past rushed forward to meet the present. I was 7 years old again, standing in that very kitchen, having spilled a glass of milk. I saw my father's face, contorted with that same impatient anger, heard those same cutting words echoing across the decades. "Why can't you be more careful, like Stella?" I had spent a lifetime promising myself that my child would never know that feeling, the corrosive shame of not being good enough. Yet here she was, drowning in it, in the very house I was paying for. This wasn't a one-time thing. It was a pattern. The way Lily would come home subdued and quiet, the little comments she'd repeat that I had brushed aside, "Grandma says I need to eat less, Grandpa says Chloe is quicker at puzzles," it all clicked into place. This was the texture of her time here. I had been so focused on providing, on earning a love that was never freely given, that I had failed to see I was funding the very environment that was slowly eroding my daughter's spirit. I watched as Lily's small shoulders began to shake with silent, suppressed sobs. She was trying so hard not to cry, not to give them another reason to call her weak. That was the last thread of my composure. It snapped. "Lily," I said, my voice cutting through the tension, quieter than my father's roar but carrying a weight that silenced the room. "Take your hands out of the sink. Right now." 5 heads swiveled in my direction. Their faces were a gallery of expressions, shock, guilt, and on my father's face, a flash of pure, defiant anger. "Clara," my mother exclaimed, her hand flying to her chest. "We had no idea you were here. You're so early." Lily's face, when she saw me, crumpled not with fear, but with an overwhelming wave of relief. "Mommy," she cried, scrambling down from the stool and running to me, burying her wet, trembling body in my legs. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tight, a protective shield. "What, exactly," I asked, my voice level and dangerously calm, "is going on here?" I stroked Lily's damp hair, my gaze never leaving my father's face. He was the first to recover, his shock hardening into a defensive posture. "I was teaching your daughter a lesson in responsibility. A lesson you've clearly neglected." "A lesson?" I repeated, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "By calling her a silly child? By making her scrub a cast-iron pan she can't even lift? Is that the lesson?" "She needs to learn to be helpful," my mother chimed in, stepping forward. "All the girls do their part around here." My eyes flickered to Chloe and Maya, who were now staring, wide-eyed, their tablet forgotten on the table. No suds on their hands. "Is that so? All the girls?" Stella finally pocketed her phone, a frown creasing her brow. "Oh, don't start, Clara. It's not a big deal. They helped set the table earlier." "Did they?" I countered, my voice low. "Or is it that Lily is the only one required to work for her keep in this house?" My father took a step towards me, using his height to loom, a tactic that had always made me shrink as a child. It didn't work anymore. "You will not use that tone in this house," he growled. "We look after your child, free of charge, so you can go off and have your important career. A little appreciation wouldn't go amiss." A bitter, humorless laugh escaped my lips. "Appreciation? For what?" For allowing my daughter to be belittled? For calling her useless? I never used that word, my mother said quickly. But you stood by while Chloe did, I shot back. And don't you dare pretend this is the first time this has happened. Lily, my love, I knelt, turning to face my daughter, is it okay if you tell me the truth? Has Grandpa ever spoken to you like this before? Lily glanced nervously at my father, then gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Use your words, sweet pea, I urged gently. You're safe now. He gets mad when I can't do things, she whispered, her voice muffled against my coat. He says I'm not as smart as Chloe and Maya, and that I have to clean up to make up for it. The kitchen was utterly silent. My mother stared at a spot on the floor. Stella shifted her weight, a flicker of discomfort on her face. My father's face was a thundercloud. That's a ridiculous exaggeration, he snapped. She's being overly dramatic. I am not. Lily's voice, surprisingly strong, pushed back. You said I was being dumb last week when I couldn't finish my book, and you said Maya finished it when she was only 5. A wave of nausea washed over me. What else, Lily? What else have they said? She wouldn't look at me, her eyes fixed on the scuffed toes of her sneakers. Grandma said, she said I shouldn't have seconds because my tummy will get big like my daddy's did. And Maya said my daddy left because I wasn't a good enough girl, and Grandma heard her but she just shushed her. I rose to my feet, my body trembling with a cold, protective fury. I turned my gaze to my sister. Stella. Get your daughters. And leave. Now. Excuse me, she scoffed, her indignation flaring. You don't get to order me out of our parents' house. You can either leave on your own, I said, my voice deadly quiet, or you can stay and listen to everything I have to say about the kind of mother who allows her children to be so cruel. The choice is yours. Something in my eyes must have communicated that I was no longer the little sister she could dismiss. With a theatrical sigh, she gathered her daughters. Come on, girls. Your Aunt Clara is having one of her episodes. As they walked past, I added one more thing. And Stella. If I ever find out that your children have repeated those poisonous lies about Lily's father again, you and I are done. Permanently. The front door slammed shut, the sound echoing in the tense silence. I turned back to my parents. How could you? I whispered, the rage now a deep, painful ache. How could you do this to her? You are overreacting, Clara, my mother said, her voice thin and brittle. It was a simple matter of discipline. Discipline? I shook my head, the motion clearing some of the fog of disbelief. This isn't discipline. This is the same soul-crushing favoritism you raised me with. The same impossible standards, the same casual cruelty. The only difference is that now it's being inflicted on my child. We gave you a good life, my father shouted, his control finally breaking. A roof over your head, clothes on your back. You gave Stella a good life, I corrected him, my own voice rising to meet his. I was the responsible one, the practical one, the one who was never quite enough. And you're doing the exact same thing to Lily, turning her into the family workhorse while her cousins are treated like princesses. After everything we've done for you, my mother's voice adopted the martyred tone that had been her shield for decades, this is the thanks we get? Ingratitude and wild accusations? What you've done for me? I asked, my voice incredulous. Let's be clear. For the last 3 years, I have been the one supporting you. I am the reason you still have a roof over your head. Their faces went pale. They had never imagined I would speak of it, especially not here, now. That's a family matter, my father blustered, his anger deflating into discomfort. Yes, it is, I agreed, taking Lily's small, cold hand in mine. And family doesn't make a 6-year-old feel worthless. Family doesn't stand by while one child is bullied by another. We're leaving. And I don't know when we'll be back. You can't be serious, my mother hissed. You can't just keep our granddaughter from us. Watch me, I said, my voice as steady as stone. Being a grandparent is a privilege you have to earn. And today, you lost it. I turned and walked toward the door, my daughter's hand held tightly in mine. Don't you forget your duty to this family, Clara, my father called after me, a last, desperate attempt to assert control. I stopped in the doorway and turned back to face them, two aging figures suddenly looking small and lost in their large, beautiful kitchen. I think you've mistaken my generosity for your duty, I said softly. And that ends today. In the car, the rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers was the only sound for a long time. Lily was quiet in her car seat, her small face pale. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror, she looked so fragile, a little ship tossed on a stormy sea she didn't create. Are we in big trouble, Mommy? She asked, her voice small. My heart broke a little more. No, sweet pea, I said, my voice thick with emotion. We are not in trouble at all. But I think Grandma and Grandpa might be. The drive back to our cozy little apartment in Selwood felt like a journey across a vast, desolate landscape. Lily was quiet, staring out at the rain-streaked city lights, a universe of thoughts swirling behind her sad, hazel eyes. Lilybug, I said gently as we waited at a stoplight. I need you to know, with your whole heart, that nothing that happened today was because of you. Nothing. But I was slow, she whispered, her voice barely audible. And I made a mess. Oh, honey. I twisted in my seat to look at her. You are 6 years old. Your only jobs are to learn, to play, and to be a kid. Scrubbing heavy pans is a grown-up's job. A job you should never have been asked to do. Grandpa said I have to learn not to be spoiled. Each word was a fresh wound. I knew I had to ask, even though I was afraid of the answer. Can you tell me more about what happens at their house? The real truth. I won't be mad, and you won't be in trouble. And so, as the city lights blurred past, the story came tumbling out. It wasn't just today. It was every Tuesday and Thursday. While I was at my desk at Riverbend, poring over portfolios and retirement plans, my daughter was being taught a different kind of lesson. She was tasked with chores, weeding the garden, dusting the bookshelves, sorting the laundry, while her cousins were given cookies and screen time. The favoritism was woven into the fabric of their visits. Chloe and Maya got to choose the afternoon movie, Lily had to watch what they picked. At lunchtime, they were offered second helpings and dessert. Lily was told to watch her figure. Their artwork was praised and hung on the refrigerator with bright, cheerful magnets. Lily's was set aside on the counter and often forgotten. Why didn't you tell me any of this, sweetie? I asked, my voice choked with a grief so profound it felt like a physical weight in my chest. Grandpa said you have a very important job, she explained, her voice small and earnest. He said I shouldn't bother you with little things and that you would be disappointed if you knew I wasn't as helpful as my cousins. I had allowed this to happen. In my desperate, lifelong quest for their approval, I had sacrificed my own child's well-being on the altar of their comfort. I had been teaching her the same toxic lesson I had learned, that love is transactional, that your worth is measured by your utility. That night, after I had tucked Lily into bed with extra stories and a promise that she was the most wonderful thing in my world, I sat at my small kitchen table. The rain had softened to a gentle patter against the windowpane. I opened my laptop, my hands trembling as I navigated to my bank's website. There it was, a neat, orderly list of transactions, 3 years of automatic payments to my parents' mortgage company. 36 payments of $3,100. Over $100,000. I stared at the numbers, a monument to my misplaced hope. Then, with a deep breath that felt like both an ending and a beginning, I clicked the button that said, Cancel Scheduled Payment. My next call was to my financial planner, a kind, older man named David. I explained that the funds previously allocated to a family expense would now be redirected every month into a new $529 college savings plan for Lily. That's a substantial change, Clara, he said, his voice laced with professional concern. Are you certain? I've never been more certain of anything in my life, I replied. I also asked him to help me set up a trust for Lily, one with such ironclad language that my parents could never, under any circumstances, touch it. I turned off my phone for the night, creating a small sanctuary of silence. I knew a storm of calls and messages was coming. When I turned it back on in the morning, my screen was filled with them. 7 missed calls. A dozen texts. Clara, the payment was declined. Call me. What is the meaning of this? Your mother is worried sick. This is not a game, Clara. Call us. I read them, a strange sense of detachment washing over me, and then I deleted them all. The next few days were a blur of raw emotion and quiet resolve. My dear friend Sarah, a landscape architect with a heart as big as the gardens she designed, listened patiently as I recounted the whole story over coffee. You did the only thing you could do, she said, her hand covering mine on the table. You chose your daughter. That's what a mother does. But to cut them off completely? Financially? It feels so brutal. Clara, she said, her gaze steady, what's brutal is a grown man making his 6-year-old granddaughter feel worthless. What's brutal is a family that uses a child as a scapegoat. You didn't create this situation. You just stopped enabling it. That's not brutality, that's a boundary. Her words were a balm, but a lifetime of conditioning is a powerful thing. The guilt lingered, a ghost at the edge of my consciousness. That evening, it was Stella's turn. A long, rambling text message arrived, accusing me of being selfish and cruel. They are your parents, Clara. You can't just throw them away over one little misunderstanding. The world is a tough place, Lily needs to learn that. I waited until Lily was fast asleep, her face peaceful in the soft glow of her night light, before I replied. My financial relationship with Mom and Dad is over, and it is not your concern. But if you ever again stand by while your children are cruel to my daughter, you will be cut off, too. Not from my money, but from our lives. Completely. She didn't write back. The most chilling moment came 3 days later. A fraud alert from my bank. My father had walked into a branch and tried to withdraw funds from my personal savings account, claiming he had verbal authorization. The attempt failed, but the audacity of it stole my breath. It laid bare the truth I had been avoiding for years. In their eyes, I wasn't a daughter to be loved. I was a resource to be managed. A safety net they felt entitled to. And they were grooming Lily to take my place. In the weeks that followed, I pieced together the full, heartbreaking picture. Through gentle conversations with Lily and a consultation with her pediatrician, I learned the extent of the systematic emotional erosion. They had created a narrative in which her cousins were the benchmark for success, and she was, by definition, a failure. The most painful discovery of all came from a stray comment from my Aunt Carol, my mother's sister. My parents had inherited a substantial sum from my grandfather, enough to have secured their retirement for the rest of their lives. They had spent it all within a decade on frivolous renovations and ill-advised investments. The mortgage payments I had been making were not a temporary bridge, they were their long-term retirement plan. I had not been helping them out of a jam, I had been their designated solution. The cycle of dependency and manipulation was meant to continue, with my daughter as the next link in the chain. And I was the one who had to break it. About a week after I'd stopped the payments, my father left a voicemail that made the hairs on my arms stand up. His voice was low and menacing. Clara. Your little game is over. The bank has sent us a formal notice. You will fix this, and you will fix it now. You have a duty to this family. Don't you ever forget that we raised you. Call me by the end of the day, or you will regret it. The message confirmed everything. This wasn't about love or family, it was about obligation. My mother tried a different tactic, calling my direct line at work. My assistant, knowing the situation, put her on speaker. Mom, is this an emergency? I asked, my tone professional and cool. My blood pressure is dangerously high, Thanks to you, she hissed. The doctor is concerned. Do you want to be responsible for giving your own mother a heart attack? What I want, I said, my voice even, is to protect my daughter. And medical issues should be discussed with a doctor, not used as leverage. Please do not call my office again. I hung up the phone, my hand steady. That afternoon, I had my first session with Dr. Anya Sharma, a therapist specializing in family systems. She had warm, intelligent eyes and a calm presence that immediately put me at ease. After I had laid out the entire story, she nodded slowly. What you're describing, Clara, is a classic dynamic, she explained. The golden child and the scapegoat. Your parents have extended these roles to the next generation. It's a powerful, often unconscious pattern. But am I doing the right thing? I asked, the persistent voice of guilt whispering in my ear. Cutting them off financially seems so extreme. Dr. Sharma leaned forward slightly. Let me ask you this. If a babysitter you hired spoke to Lily the way your father did, would you continue to pay her? The answer was so simple, so obvious. No. Of course not. I would fire her on the spot. Your parents are adults, responsible for their own choices and their own financial well-being, she said gently. Lily is a child, and she depends on you for her emotional and physical safety. Protecting your child is never an extreme reaction. I left her office feeling as though a great weight had been lifted, replaced by a clear, quiet strength. But the fallout was far from over. A few days later, I ran into Stella in the parking lot of Lily's school. The bank is starting foreclosure proceedings, she said, her voice sharp and accusatory. They can't make the payments. I'm sorry to hear that, I said calmly, helping Lily buckle her seatbelt. That's it? That's all you have to say? Her voice rose, and a few other parents glanced over. There are parents, Clara. Yes, they are, I agreed, turning to face her. And Lily is my daughter. I will not pay for the privilege of having her emotionally abused. Family or not. Abuse, she scoffed. You're being so dramatic. Dad was just trying to instill a little discipline. By making her feel worthless? By comparing her to your daughters? By allowing your children to tell her that her father left because she wasn't good enough? I kept my voice low, but each word was laced with steel. That is abuse, Stella. And you know it is, because you grew up watching it happen to me. The only difference is that you were always on the winning side. So that's what this is about, she shot back. You're still jealous after all these years? You're punishing them because you think they loved me more? No, I said, a deep sadness settling over me. This is about making sure my daughter never has to recover from her childhood. And if you had an ounce of real empathy, you would understand that. A flicker of something, recognition, maybe even shame, crossed her face before her defensive mask slipped back into place. Well, don't look at me to help them. Mark and I can't afford their mortgage. I never thought you could, I said, and for the first time, there was no bitterness in my voice, only a quiet truth. But maybe it's time they learned to rely on themselves. That evening, a hard, insistent knock echoed through my apartment. I looked through the peephole and saw them, my parents, their faces grim. I spoke through the closed door. I'm not opening the door. You need to leave. Clara, this is ridiculous, my mother's shrill voice penetrated the wood. Open this door and let's discuss this like civilized people. I am happy to talk, I replied, my voice firm. When you are ready to acknowledge what you did to Lily, and when you are willing to do it in a neutral setting, with a therapist present. Until then, there is nothing to discuss. Please leave, or I will call security. You'd call security on your own parents? My father boomed. Yes, I said softly. I would. They left, hurling insults at the closed door, but I felt nothing but a profound sense of peace. I was finally, truly, protecting my home. A week later, the foreclosure notice became official. Reality, it seemed, was a tide that could no longer be held back. My father called me on a Sunday afternoon. His voice, for the first time I could remember, was devoid of its usual bluster. It was the voice of a man who had run out of road. "Clara," he said. "We need to talk." "I'm willing to do that," I said, my heart surprisingly steady. "With Dr. Sharma." "As we discussed." There was a long pause. I could hear the fight warring with the defeat in his silence. "Fine," he finally conceded. "Whatever you want." The following week, we sat in the soft, neutral space of Dr. Sharma's office. I had arranged for Sarah to watch Lily, wanting to shield her from the fraught, adult emotions of the day. My parents looked tired, older than I had ever seen them. The weight of their circumstances was etched on their faces. Dr. Sharma began by setting a simple ground rule: we would speak one at a time, with respect. She turned to me. "Clara, perhaps you can start by explaining what you hope to achieve today." I took a deep breath. "I'm here for one reason, to protect my daughter. What happened in your kitchen was the culmination of a long, painful pattern. Lily has been made to feel less than in your home, and that is not acceptable to me. It has to stop." As for the financial support, I continued, meeting their eyes, that was always meant to be a temporary help, not a permanent expectation. I cannot, and will not, continue to fund a household where my child is mistreated. When I finished, my father could barely wait for Dr. Sharma's nod. He leaned forward, his hands clenched. "This is an absurd overreaction. I was teaching the girl some discipline. And the money you offered. To throw it in our faces now is nothing short of vindictive." "Arthur," Dr. Sharma interjected calmly. "I hear your frustration. But can you understand, even for a moment, why seeing her daughter called names and forced to do chores might have been profoundly upsetting for Clara? The world is a tough place," he insisted. "There is a difference between preparing a child for the world and breaking her spirit," I said quietly. "Discipline builds character. Humiliation destroys it." My mother then began, her voice quivering with the familiar cadence of a martyr. "We have only ever loved Harper. We did our best. How can you be so cruel to us, your own parents?" "It wasn't one time," I stated, my voice firm. "Harper has told me everything. The chores, the comparisons, the constant sense that she had to earn her place. Children have wild imaginations," she dismissed. Dr. Sharma leaned forward. "From a professional standpoint, children rarely fabricate consistent patterns of mistreatment. They may misinterpret an event, but a repeated narrative almost always has a foundation in reality." My father's face flushed. "So you're on her side?" "There are no sides here," she corrected gently. "There is only the question of whether you are willing to acknowledge the pain your actions have caused and if you are willing to change." "And if we are," my father demanded, his voice raw. "Will the money start again?" The question hung in the air, stark and revealing. It was never about Lily. It was never about our relationship. It was about the money. "No," I said, my voice soft but unshakable. "That is over. Permanently. What is on the table is the possibility of having a relationship with your granddaughter. But it will be on new terms. My terms." The meeting ended with a fragile, tentative agreement. They would attend therapy to address their behavior. They would acknowledge the favoritism and commit to treating all their grandchildren with equal kindness. And any future visits with Lily would be brief, supervised, and only after they had demonstrated a real effort to change. My father bristled at the conditions, but my mother, to my surprise, looked at me, her eyes filled with a desperate fear of loss, and nodded. "If it's what we have to do to see Lily," she whispered, "we'll do it." 2 weeks later, they sold the Craftsman bungalow. The sale covered their debts and left them enough to buy a small, manageable condo on the outskirts of the city. The process was painful for them, an undoing of a life they had built, but it was also a first step toward a different kind of freedom, the freedom from expectations they couldn't meet. During this time, Lily blossomed. Freed from the constant, subtle pressure of my parents' home, she became lighter, more joyful. Her teacher remarked on her newfound confidence in class. The quiet, hesitant child was slowly being replaced by a bright, curious, and resilient little girl. 3 months after that first, explosive therapy session, my parents requested another meeting with me. Dr. Sharma had told me they were making slow, difficult progress. In the session, my mother looked directly at me, her eyes clear of their usual defensiveness. "I stood by and I let Arthur speak to Lily that way," she said, her voice trembling. "I saw how we treated her differently from the other girls, and I told myself it was for her own good. I was wrong. We were doing to her exactly what we did to you. And for that, Clara, I am truly sorry." My father, a man of few emotional words, cleared his throat. "I shouldn't have called her names," he said, his voice gruff. "I'm trying to be better." It wasn't a magical fix, but it was a crack of light in a door that had been sealed shut for decades. We agreed to a short, supervised visit at Laurelhurst Park. It was awkward. But my parents brought Lily a book about Oregon's native birds, not a doll. My father didn't criticize when she stumbled while climbing the play structure, he just watched. As we were leaving, Lily spontaneously gave my mother a quick hug. "Bye, Grandma," she said. "I like my book." I saw tears well in my mother's eyes as she hugged her back. The road ahead is long. A lifetime of patterns cannot be undone in a few months. But in that small, hopeful moment in the park, I saw the possibility of a new kind of family, one built not on obligation and unspoken rules, but on conscious effort and a willingness to heal. They are learning to live within their means. My father has found part-time work at the Oregon Historical Society, and my mother has joined a book club. Kimberly and I even had coffee, a conversation where she admitted, for the first time, that being the favorite had left her unprepared for life in its own way. A year has passed since that rainy Tuesday. We celebrated Lily's 7th birthday in our apartment. My parents came. They brought a science kit, something Lily had been wanting for months. They watched her, their faces filled with a quiet, gentle pride that felt real. Stella and her daughters were there, too, and I watched, amazed, as Chloe helped Lily assemble a complex part of her new kit, their heads bent together in concentration. Later that night, as I was tucking Lily into bed, she looked up at me with her wise, old-soul eyes. "Mommy," she asked, "is it okay that I still love Grandma and Grandpa, even after they were mean?" I sat on the edge of her bed and smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "Oh, sweet pea," I said, my heart full. "It is more than okay. People make mistakes, even big ones. The important thing is that they are trying to learn how to be kind, and that you always, always know that you deserve to be treated with love and respect." She nodded, a thoughtful little frown on her face. "I think they're learning," she said. "Like how I'm learning my times tables. It's just harder for them, I think, because they're older." I smiled. She was right. Healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about learning from it. Stopping those payments wasn't an act of revenge. It was an act of love, a fierce, protective love for my daughter, and a tough, boundary-setting love for my parents. It was a declaration that our family's worth could no longer be measured in dollars and cents, but in the slow, difficult, and beautiful work of learning to truly care for one another. The cycle was broken. And in its place, something new, something far more precious, had begun to grow.